So that's one side of the triangle. The other side of the triangle is what is the quantity of units that I'm selling? And that's basically two other levers, which is marketing and sales. And those are two completely different animals, right? Marketing is the driving of leads into the business. And sales is taking those leads and turning them into customers. And there's another piece of sales that people don't think about, which is the actual customer experience during the delivery and then following up afterwards, getting reviews, testimonials, and giving them ways to share your message with others.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Hey, we're doing something new. I'm going to have a live Q&A meeting on Zoom on March 22nd. At 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You can join us live and ask your questions. I'll be happy to answer them. If you can't make it that day, email your questions ahead of time and we'll put them in there and we'll answer them for all of you. So hopefully you can join us that day. I'm going to put a link in the show notes with Eventbrite code so that you can sign up and get notified and have the details for the call. So we hope to see you there on March 22nd. Today, we're going to dig deep into all the levers that affect your profitability. And the reality is, small changes in each of these levers over time add up to big profits that you get to keep and remove from your business. This is not overnight success, but a systematic way to achieve the results you want. The question is, when will you start? Hopefully, after listening to today's episode. We have on a fellow Profit First professional, Moshe Amsel, who is the host of the Profit with Law podcast and the Law Firm Growth Summit. He helps law firm owners grow their practice with a focus on creating generational wealth. However, it doesn't matter if you're a law firm because these principles apply to you as well. As a married, loving husband and father of 6 children ranging from 23 to a baby, he's very familiar with the struggles of running a successful business and still prioritizing his family. He has 20 years of experience in the IT industry as a business executive and extensive experience in sales and marketing. And he is a Profit First professional and owns his own accounting practice and Dream Builder Financial, where he helps clients with business advisory and tax strategy services. Let's learn from him. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Moshe Amsel. It's great to have you join us today.
It's my pleasure to be here, Rocky. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate the invite, and I'm excited for what we might get to talk about in the next half hour or so.
As am I. So can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Absolutely. So my background actually started in IT. I spent 20 years in the IT industry before becoming an accountant. But then I went to school for accounting simultaneously to that career. And when I went out to find a job as an accountant, nobody wanted to hire me. I had too much real world experience. So they couldn't mold me into the slave that most accounting firms like to produce. So I had to open my own accounting firm. And when I did that, it was what really drove me to get started was I was a single dad, and I had found out that my ex-wife was an alcoholic, and the kids were with her most of the time, and they were being neglected and really not physically abused, but emotionally abused. I mean, to the extent that like one time it was 3 a.m. and the kids were up waiting for her to come home, and they wanted to know where she was. So they called her, and her phone got answered by a taxi cab driver. And he said, this phone was left in my car. I don't know where your mother is, and they just, that was how they were surviving. So when they moved in with me full time, there was a lot of therapy, a lot of Alateen meetings. Literally every day I was running to another therapist, another meeting. They all wanted a different therapist. They all wanted a different meeting. It wasn't okay to go to the same person. And that really made me realize that I have to be in absolute control of my time. I can't be asking permission every time I need to go somewhere for an appointment. So that really drove me to make the move into my own full-time business owner of my accounting firm. And when you start your own business, you want to figure out how to differentiate yourself from other people. So I started to look around and say, okay, how can I differentiate myself? And I first started to look to differentiate myself by who I serve, and realized that wasn't enough. And that's around that time I stumbled upon this book, Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, which a lot of accountants, don't like, but I loved it. I thought that it was a great solution. I thought it was a great idea to turn around and help my clients to do that. So very quickly got turned on to his podcast, and then the Profit First Professional brand. And back in 2016, I became a Profit First Professional. And it's hard to believe it's already been 6 years. I mean, it's really not that long a period of time, but it's when you're own your own business and business growth, it's kind of like your kid growing up. It's the difference between toddler and 6 years old. It's a huge difference. So became a Profit First Professional, and that really opened up the doors for what I could provide as a service and who I can help and how I can help them, which was much more aligned to what I didn't want to be a tax guy. I wanted to be somebody who's helping people with creating their generational wealth. And there's a story behind that if we have time to get to it. But through PFP, I guess people reach out to them and say, hey, I'm looking for an accountant who can help me implement Profit First. Through PFP, I got introduced to a law firm in Manhattan. And that became my first lawyer client or legal law firm client. They were part of a coaching organization, had a whole network of friends that had similar issues to them. Before I knew it, I had 5 law firms as clients, and 4 of the 5 had the same problem. All 4 of them were on the outside looked like beautiful firms. I mean, you walked into the office and the office is nice, and there's multiple attorneys working there. There's multiple support staff members. They're all busy, but the owner was literally moving personal funds to cover payroll and rent. 3 different major transactions a month that needed to have money movement to make that happen. And clearly that's not healthy and causes a ton of anxiety and stress, but it's really a symptom of a bigger problem, which is, not enough profitability in the business. So I started to work with them to help them to implement Profit First, but I realized that more than a cash management system, there was a problem in that industry. There might be a problem in all businesses, but specifically in the legal industry, there was a problem where even the organizations that are helping them, this coaching organization that was helping them get to where they were at that point, had zero focus on profitability. It was all about how big can you get? How good can you look? And that's not really what you want in your business. You want to figure out, how can I get to a 50% profit margin? All right, how can I get to taking home 35 to 50 cents of every dollar that comes in? And that's what I set out to do, is to start helping the legal industry with doing that. And that's when the Profit with Law brand was created. And off the backs of that, I created the Law Firm Growth Summit, the first virtual 3-day conference for law firm owners that is exclusively on the business of law, as opposed to all the other legal conferences that are mainly on legal with a little bit of business thrown in.
All right, so let's take a moment here and tell a law joke, right? Because we're allowed to make fun of attorneys, and it's one that they tell me. It's like, why'd you go to law school? Because there's no math class. Which, you become allergic to profit then, because if you don't look at the math in your business and you don't want to learn about it, you're going to struggle. And the other thing I've noticed, and it happens in certain industries, it happens in legal, it happens in medical, it happens in some others. There's a lot of vanity. And so I'm an attorney. I need to drive a fancy car. I need to have a fancy office. None of that stuff increases the bottom line, right? It just sucks all your profits away, and it makes it hard for you to be profitable. So,
yeah, what I found in the industry, I mean, yeah, that's the vanity stuff is one problem, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is when there's no business taught in law school, so they're just trying to mimic what they saw in a bigger law firm. And what they're doing is, it's kind of like if you work for Microsoft and then you open your own business and you're trying to operate like Microsoft operated, right? It doesn't work. A small business operates very differently from a larger business. So when they saw big law operating, billing hourly and having retainers for their clients, and that whole business model is built around having the structure around it, having the support staff and the people to make that effective. And the reality is when you start your own business, it's you, and then you hire somebody, it's you and somebody else. It becomes a very inefficient model when you're doing a lot of your work, but you're only able to bill some of it. And what I help my clients do is to try to move away from that model as much as possible, where you can charge your client for a service, and based off of that, you can decide how to efficiently deliver that service. And it's not tied to a certain amount of time that was spent doing it. And that's really like one of the first ways to unlock success in professional services, is to move away from the billing being tied to the producer as opposed to the production of an end product.
So that sounds more like value-based pricing.
Yeah, it's a combination. Well, so we call it alternative fee billing in that industry. But yes, in accounting, in the accounting world, a very similar business model. Accountants are being told to use value-based pricing, which is, it works a lot better in accounting to call it value-based pricing because every client is a business client. So therefore, there's always a value to what you're providing that can be monetized. With legal services, there isn't always a value. Like if somebody's going through a bankruptcy, right, there isn't a dollar value that's worth to them. It's peace of mind to get the phone stopping to ring from the creditors, right? If somebody's going through a divorce, there isn't necessarily a dollar value to that. It's the peace of mind of being out of it, being able to get past it, not being taken advantage of in that process, making sure you get your kids if there's custodial issues involved. So, and I don't want to go too far down the practices of law, but you can see that there are areas of law that it's hard to put a dollar to. So I don't call it value-based pricing. I do call it flat fee billing, and I call it subscription billing. And there's hybrid models. So essentially, all we did was come up with new ideas to package the same service, where you can now, because it's not tied to your hours, there's so much work the attorney was doing that didn't need to be done by the attorney. But because they're billing by the attorney's hours, the attorney can't hand it off to somebody else, or they don't get paid. So now we've decoupled the lawyer from the billing unit, and they can charge $10,000 for a divorce up front. And now they can have an army of assistants, legal clerks, whatever, paralegals, whatever you want to call them, do the work. They're much lower cost, free the attorney to just do what they need to do, which is maybe client facing or maybe a court facing time. And everything else can get done more efficiently. So we've removed that bottleneck from the attorney, which is really one of the biggest issues when it comes to law firms and small law firms.
And I think that's the important thing, is to step back and reimagine business in a whole different way. And you're talking about law firms, it pops in my head, Dollar Shave Club, right? You just change the business model of how you do things. And you got to do it. I like to steal from other industries. So we'll steal an idea from this industry. We'll bring it to this industry, figure out how do you change the way that you do things. And more things are going to subscription based. They are going to different ways of charging and flat fee, because it just makes it so much easier for everyone that that's half the jokes with attorneys. You're billed every time they pick up the phone, which is somewhat of a pain. So it sounds like you're serving your clients better and you're taking away all the fear of what's this going to cost me and so forth. And so it makes it easier.
Yeah, it actually, the clients love that kind of billing model because when they step into it, they know what their exposure is. In the other model, they had no idea. Like, it's a bottomless pit. Like, I could be signing my life away. You might tell me, yeah, I don't expect it to take more than 10 hours, but when was that ever right? So, I can tell you firsthand, I've paid hourly for my own divorce, but more importantly, when I shared the story of my kids, living with their mom who was an alcoholic, I had to go to court to get custody of the kids, and I had to go to court to have her visitation removed. And by and large, she didn't fight me, right? It was like, should have been the easiest process, but it was drawn out. And like, there was multiple court appearances. The judge wanted to give her plenty of opportunity to turn things around. And it cost me over $50,000 to get custody of my kids, get visitation taken away from her, and to get child support removed. You would think, oh, the kids moved in with me, automatically child support removed. No, that's a whole separate court action that I had to do to not stop paying her money, even though she didn't have the kids. So it's, that stuff happens, but I was on the hook for every minute, every hour, or at least it felt that way. It would have been nice to be told, hey, this is a $50,000 thing. You're going to pay me in 4 increments. You're going to pay me 12 and a half now. We'll do 12 and a half when you get custody. We'll do another 12 and a half when when visitation rights are removed. And we'll do the last 12 and a half when the case is closed or whatever. Like, at least then I would have known what my exposure was, and I would have known the timing of that exposure so that I could be ready for it. Instead of, every time at the end of the month, get a bill, hey, 10-minute, 6-minute phone call. It's 1/10 of an hour. A fax we sent for you. It's another 1/10 of an hour, whatever it is. It's a very poor experience from the customer side. So taking the legal industry and looking at other businesses, you want to always look at how can I position my service or my product in a way that it's removing all friction for the customer experience. The less friction in the customer experience, the better they're going to love what you have and talk about you, come back for more, and the more room you have to make it more profitable.
I like it. So let's dig into profitability a little bit more. You mentioned that there are 7 different levers or areas that affect profitability. Can you tell us what those are?
Yeah, so it starts with a base triangle. So if you think of a triangle, it's got 3 sides. On the one side, we have price, what you're charging, and we'll get to each one. On the other side, you have the volume of business coming in, right? So how much you charge, and then multiplied times the volume of business coming in. And then on the base of the triangle at the bottom, you have the expenses or the cost of doing business, or the money going out. Now, you might say, okay, that's simple. That's the accounting formula, right? Revenue minus expenses equals profit. The revenue is broken down into 2 pieces. It's how much you're charging times, how many customers you're getting. But when we start to look at what drives each of those 3 sides of the triangle, we start to get these more fragmented components that have a direct effect on the profitability. So when we look at price, there's 2 components to the price. There's the offer, and there's how much you're charging for it. The offer is what is packaged in there. Like, what are they paying for when they give you X amount of dollars? What are they receiving for that? And, for example, accountants tend to do, especially profit accountants tend to do packages where they're like, okay, we're going to do an analysis of your business, and we're going to compare your projected percentages versus where your percentages are today, and we're going to come up with a plan. Now, if you want us to help you implement that plan, that's a different package of services, right? So what are the things that are included, the deliverables in that service? So there's two different legs to that piece. It's not just how much am I charging, but what am I giving away in exchange for that? Because that's going to have a direct effect on that bottom base. And what does it cost me to deliver the service? So when it comes to price, we have two pieces. We have the dollar you're charging, and we have the, what is included in that offer. And by the way, probably every business owner is undercharging. Even people who know that and have increased their price over time, they're probably undercharging. So there's always room. Like it's not the first place I go with clients, but it's one of the first places I focus on, because by solving that, you don't really need to do anything different. Raising your price doesn't require you to spend more on marketing, doesn't require you to spend more on people. You're delivering the same volume of work. So everything else stays the same, except you change how much cash is coming in. So it's literally the only lever you can move that doesn't have an effect on a different lever in the business. So it's a very powerful tool to use, and I encourage every business owner to use it regularly. So you should have an annual raise of your price no matter what. Inflation goes up every year. There's no reason you can't raise your price at least 1% to 2% every year to keep in line with inflation. But then there's other ways that you can do it. And part of that is changing the packaging, right? So if I increase what's included in my package, I can increase what I'm charging for it. I can fragment it and play with it in different ways. So there's different ways to increase your price that doesn't have to feel like a price increase because it's coupled with other things, but you've come up with a really efficient way to deliver that. So that's one side of the triangle. The other side of the triangle is, what is the quantity of units that I'm selling? And that's basically two other levers, which is marketing and sales. And those are two completely different animals, right? Marketing is the driving of leads into the business. And sales is taking those leads and turning them into customers. And there's another piece of sales that people don't think about, which is the actual customer experience during the delivery and then following up afterwards, getting reviews, testimonials, and giving them ways to share your message with others. So there's a hidden component there. But marketing and sales are two levers that you can pull that'll change the quantity of clients that you're bringing in, and they have a direct effect on profitability, not from the way you're thinking of, oh, I'm just going to bring in more people so that I'm multiplying more times the number of sales, but marketing is also a cost, right? So marketing also goes on that bottom part of the ladder of the triangle, and when you solve the problem of converting more leads into sales than you were before, you can increase that number without increasing your marketing spend. And that's another key lever that you can pull that doesn't really cost you more to get really good at that. And that requires you to really pay attention to some key numbers, which are your KPIs. I put KPIs in that base of the triangle in controlling your costs, but it really is throughout your business. KPIs is key performance indicators. And that's basically where I am paying attention to some numbers that are going to help me improve one of my profitability levers. So, for example, I just laid out how marketing and sales, if you improve the efficiency there, that's a lever that you can pull to improve your profitability. How do you do that? Well, for my clients, a lead comes in, they book a consult. And then from the consult, they pitch them a service. They either become a client or then there's a follow-up and then they become a client or they don't. So essentially what we can do is we can say, okay, what percentage of leads that come in actually book a consult? And what percentage of consults booked actually show up to the consult? And then what percentage of the people who showed up to a consult close on the consult and what percentage close in post-sale? When we start looking at those percentages, we can look for the one where there's the biggest drop off. And usually it's for my clients, usually it's from booking a consult to showing up for the consult. They lose the bulk of their clients. And people are very quick to book, unless they're charging for a consult, then it happens before booking the consult. But often they're doing a free consult, they're getting somebody to book, but they're not getting them to show up. And when we identify that, then I say, okay, what kind of out of the box way can you think of to get somebody to show up where they were supposed to be when they're supposed to be there, right? And it's the counterintuitive to charging for a consult, right? What if you offered them a $100 Amazon gift card to show up to the consult? When you know that you're closing 50% of the people who show up, you can significantly move the needle by throwing something in that they're going to get. It doesn't have to be a $100 Amazon gift card. It's just an example. But you want to start thinking outside the box of like, okay, now that I've identified this KPI, how do I move the needle on it? All right. So at the base of the triangle, those are your expenses. And your expenses, and I don't like to call them expenses, but the reality is that that's the money out of the business. But it's also should be the production, right? So that's where our leadership and our team development falls, which is another key lever of profitability. Because if we get our pricing and packaging right, we've established it in a way that we can push work down to lower cost employees, which means that we can have less expensive people at the top to oversee, lead, and manage those employees. And we can create an efficient way of performing or delivering the product. And this is specifically for businesses where the human resources are the thing you're selling. So professional services, when you're selling other things like widgets, actual products, things like that it changes, because we would just change HR to production of your widget, right? But it's basically the delivery of what you're selling is a key component there. So team and leadership, which they're separate. We can lump them together. Either way, that's going to fall into that base of that triangle. The other two pieces that we really, I touched on KPIs, but the other two pieces that I really didn't talk about is time management and abundance mindset. Because at the end of the day, all of these things are really nice. But if you don't have somebody executing on them, if you don't have somebody, driving the agenda and making sure this is happening, ultimately what you're doing is just going through the motions and hoping everything's going to work out. And that's where, time management is really important from leadership down. So the CEO needs to be really good at time management so that they are really focused on just the things that they need to be doing. But then they need to also be really, really clear. And this is part of leadership, really, is that every person in the organization has absolute clarity about what is their role and what are they responsible for. And I put this under time management umbrella, but essentially it's their job to make sure that if there's something ends up on their plate, but it's not their responsibility, that they make sure it gets to the right person and they're not trying to do things that are not their responsibility, because that creates inefficiency, which affects your profitability. It affects your bottom line. And then the other piece is this abundance mindset, which is really just this idea that the best analogy is where we have the hardest part with this is approaching the marketplace, where I think that everyone's my competition. And the reality is that they're not, right? There really is no competition for your business in the marketplace. People will argue with me till they're blue in the face. The reality is that whether you're selling yourself, your company as a service, or whether you're selling a product, nobody does it like you. Even if it solves the same problem, nobody does it like you, which means that there's a subset of the population that wants to work with you. And your job is to find those people and to get them to buy from you. So it's not the size of the pie that's limited, right? You can expand the pie to be as big as you want it to be. You just need to embrace this idea that there's somebody out there for me, and I just need to figure out how to find them. I need to figure out how to help them identify that I'm there for them. And that's really the job that I need to do. It also comes into play when it comes to building your team or any sort of investment in your business, because counter to this is kind of like the approach of profit first is like, okay, you need to have the money in the bank in order to spend it. And people have a really hard time grasping, But okay, so what happens if I need to make an investment in my business? I don't have the money there. Well, you make an investment in your business, right? You purposely say, I'm making an investment in my business. I'm investing X amount of dollars and I'm doing this, right? Where does that money come from? It doesn't matter. It can come from a bank loan. It could come from a family friend. It could come from your own savings. At some point, investment in business is not a bad thing. If you're using it to save a sinking ship, it could be a bad thing, right? You're using it to cover payroll because the business model is broken. Not a good thing to be borrowing money from, or taking, grandma's retirement and using it to keep your business afloat. But if you, the one example I had on my podcast is an attorney came on and talked about his big breakthrough was when he invested in TV advertising for his law firm. And he needed to come up with a significant sum of money to make that investment. He had initially tested it, had a lot of success with it, and said, okay, we need to go big. And that was his massive breakthrough. But he borrowed his parents' retirement in order to do that. And sometimes investments like that are required. So the abundance mindset is the part of you that can see the big picture and can see that if you put money up front in an investment, if you create a pipeline, if you create opportunity for your business, whether it's marketing, whether it's people, whether it's product you need to invest in, that if you do that, you now have you've opened the ability to now sell it, to now fill it, to now, have that take effect. And sometimes we need to invest, not sometimes, often in business, we need to invest before the results from that investment come in. And that requires us to think very differently. Yeah, we need to be we need to not be risk averse. We need to be willing to take risks, but it requires that abundance. Those are the profit levers that I believe that if you really master each of those, you cannot fail at getting 35 to 50% profitability in your business.
And that's very much what we do. I've always said business is a math equation. You need to figure out the math equation for your business. And what you talk about is what we do for all our clients. We break it all down from lead flow to conversion rates to what that looks like, figuring out all the different costs that go in there, which creates profit. And then we look at the cash flow, money coming in and out of the business that's not from the business. In other words, borrowing money, investor, and also the business owner putting their money into there. And I think once you start tracking all of that and you have clarity on it all, and then what we do is we can look at that and we can see where the math equation's broken. And then we just help the business owner take the next step. Like, hey, if we fix this part of the math equation, everything unlocks and we get to the next level. And then we'll find the next roadblock and take the next step and get to the next level. And again, this is not overnight success. This doesn't get fixed in a month. It takes time. And little by little, you'll get there. Profit First is a great cash flow system. It's the basis of it. But then there is so much more that we do on top of that to really tweak it and to master it and to make sure that it really helps clients get to where they need to be. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you look at Mike's biggest success stories, they're people who took Profit First and then went and built on top of it by changing the way they did business.
Right. And really what Profit First did was it forced them to see the problem that they didn't see otherwise, right? Like people are not going and reading their P&L statements. So you don't know that you're losing money. Sometimes you feel flush with cash, you feel rich, but you just happen to have a bunch of clients that paid invoices, or you happen to make a big sale. But the reality is that didn't fix the underlying problem in your business, and that'll catch up with itself. With us, we do the Law Firm Growth Summit, and we have a major promotion. We bring in an influx of clients, brings in an influx of cash into the business. But then we got nothing going on for a few months until our next promotion. And if you're operating from this bank balance accounting, you're looking at your bank account, it can be very deceiving to think, oh, wow, look at that. We got $100,000 just came in this week. We can go in and invest in that thing we were looking to invest in, not realizing that my burn is, $30,000 a month and I need this for 3 months and it's all spoken for, right? So it's really important to understand how all of this comes in, goes out, the ebbs and flows of the business. And people who are afraid to pay attention to the numbers are really setting themselves up for failure. And you don't have to be an accountant, but you do need to at least understand the basics of how your business. It's the heartbeat of the business. The numbers are the heartbeat of the business. You said something really interesting that I think we really should talk about for a moment, and that is, give it enough time. And time is a funny thing, because when I'm talking to somebody about, what do they see, how do they see success? Like, how do they define success? And they're like, okay, well, I want to have $1 million business. I want to have a $10 million business. But it's until we tie a time frame to it, does it actually mean anything, right? Like, oh, I want to have $1 million business in 1 year, right? If I told you can have $1 million business, work really hard, and in 30 years you're going to get to $1 million business, right? That wouldn't sound very exciting to you. It wouldn't sound like something that, hey, maybe I'm on the wrong track. Maybe I should just go and work for a paycheck, right? This is not really something I want to do. So time is a very funny thing in that when something happens more quickly, and it's a positive thing, it seems very exciting. But when it's very far away, it doesn't seem exciting at all. The problem is that business owners have a tendency to think that overnight success is a real thing. And they tie time to a result that is too quick. And because of that, we're trying to shortcut the system. We're trying to game the system. And we think that throwing money at it is going to fix it. And that's where we make a lot of our mistakes. And we make investments because we think we're investing in a shortcut, when in reality, what it's going to take is actually growing into that growth, or grow. You need to grow into those shoes, right? I like the analogy of a kid growing up, because it's really what we're doing with businesses. We're raising another child, and you can't put your kid in shoes that are too big. They're going to fall, right? You're not going to be able to stretch their foot and make it fit. You got to buy the right shoes. So you have to know what stage of business you're at, and you have to behave in that stage, and then take the micro steps that are going to move you to the next stage. And when you do that over and over and over again, suddenly you can look back, and 3 years later or 5 years later, you've achieved a massive amount of success, where the person who keeps trying to achieve success in the next 3 months is still going to be trying to achieve success in the next 3 months, 10 years later, and still not have anything to show for it.
And at the end of that, you're actually profitable. I can't tell you how many people have grown their top line revenue and created this big business that is still unprofitable or still not paying them. And that's just a waste of time, effort, and money. So let's make sure you're consistently profitable from the beginning, and that you grow profitably over time. If people would like to learn more about what you do, connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
So I have a podcast called Profit with Law. I love podcasts as a medium. And since we're talking to podcast listeners, go check out my podcast if it's relevant to you. ProfitWithLaw.com is where you can find that. We run the Law Firm Growth Summit. LawFirmGrowthSummit.com is where you can find that. If you want to connect with me on social, Moshe Amsel or Moshe Rosenblum Amsel is where I might show up. On Facebook, I have the full last name. On LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, it's just Amsel. So just put in some iteration of that, or Google it. You will find it. I'm not hard to find. I'm not a John Smith, so it should be easy to locate me.
And thank you so much for joining us. We'll put some of that into the show notes to help people find you.
Awesome. It's been my pleasure being here today, Rocky. Thank you for inviting me.
Everything you heard today is exactly what we do for our clients. We map out the math equation of your specific business, and then we figure out where the bottlenecks are. We play what-if games to see which lever creates the biggest impact, and then we figure out the next step to get you moving in that direction. Like we said, it's not an overnight success. The course also does this as well, the Profit Blueprint. It provides you the spreadsheets to see how it all comes together and creates a scoreboard so you can see your results in a time-bound way. I keep saying no one's going to watch a football game that doesn't have a clock and a scoreboard, because it'd be pretty boring and you wouldn't know who's winning. So if you need help reach out to one of us or find somebody else. That's okay too. We all have an abundance mindset at Profit First. We just want you to be successful. And that's the bottom line. So figure out your math and then take the next step. But remember, you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful and focus on the bottom line.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done for you service, you can hire us as your chief profitability officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.